Well, it's time for LemoTetson to give his thoughts on this whole 2016 situation, this election. Let me put it in plain words. Let me put it out there for the world to understand, because I've tried to learn, find things out just like everybody else. I've come to this conclusion. Donald Trump is really the most like Silvio Berlusconi. He came out of the pop culture. He came through real estate, into the pop culture, into politics. He's taken the same route, right-wing, populist, voice of the common man. He's doing all of this. It's very interesting for a man to defeat a political party. Could he beat Hillary? Well, he already shocked the people in the primary, so it could happen. But here's what people need to realize. Trump is not going to completely change the American system. Okay? He's not going to, he can't change America into, the Third Reich like a lot of folks are scared of, or maybe white nationalists are looking forward to. Okay, we have a constitutional democracy. He would be very, very limited. Hitler did overthrow the Weimar Republic in he was, of course, appointed chancellor in 1933. But he attempted to do so originally with the beer hall putsch, and we know that everything was kind of in order for the Nazi overthrow. We know that, the German army would still raise the old flag of the empire, and there were still intellectuals and folks in power and in certain positions who held very, very right-wing views. So it's almost like the democracy never existed in the first place. We had communists and fascists fighting in the streets during the days of the Weimar Republic, and if you killed a communist, you received a lot less jail time than if you killed somebody else. So the courts were already leaning right. There was an attempted right-wing overthrow in, I believe, 1920, the cop putsch. And of course, Hitler had his beer hall putsch in 23, went to jail, came back, and eventually about a decade later took over. But he overthrew the Weimar Republic. He overthrew democracy in the country. Trump's not going to do that. It can't happen in 2016. People don't need to be scared. He's a right-wing populist. He's into the tariffs. He's into this and that. And it's interesting, though, because he kind of started out the way he is now, a little more polished. But in the 80s, he was more right-wing populist. He talked about tariffs, and of course, the same rhetoric we see now with the goal to tax outsourced jobs and to help internal domestic companies against imports. He talked about Japan dumping their VCRs here and this and that on Oprah. And there was talk about him being Quayle, taking the place or filling the spot that Quayle eventually filled as H.W. Bush's vice. But Trump didn't do it. He became a pop culture figure in the 90s and 2000s. He probably leaned left throughout that time period, because not only did he donate to Democratic causes, but he did praise Democrats, there's no doubt. And he ran in 2000 on the Reform Party ticket. He received the most votes in 2 states. And we know that he had connections to Jesse Ventura, and that's what kind of brought him into the Reform Party. And I think Trump is now mixing his two histories. I think he's mixing his kind of right-wing populism from the 80s with that kind of anti-establishment Reform Party, Ross Perot, Jesse Ventura line of thinking. But it's interesting, the interviews, the articles and videos are still online. CNN, 1999, he did an interview where he told the world that 1% of the people control 90% of the wealth in this country. And he talked about a 14% net worth tax, and he talked about being pro-choice with Tim Russert, and we know the whole thing. So here's the thing. Trump went from right-wing populist to left-wing populist to right-wing populist. But he did not only donate to Hillary, but he supported a lot of her policies, and a lot of policies of the establishment. He supported the 2009 stimulus package with Obama. He didn't really go back to the right till 11 when you get the birther movement. But I think it's very interesting the way this whole thing has happened, because we do see over the last few years the buildup for Ted Cruz. We do see the buildup of the orthodox Tea Party, Glenn Beck, Mark Levin. We're not going to compromise. We're further to the right. Cut. Wisconsin, Scott Walker line of thinking. Ted Cruz had a history here. The Republican establishment obviously did, with Jeb Bush, Marco Rubio, and other characters like that. But the Trump movement almost came out of nowhere. I mean, I didn't see hints of people talking about tariffs over the last 8 years. So it's interesting, from 01 to 09, you have Bush. His legacy will be kind of 3 things: 9/11, the wars, and the 08 recession. America turns to the left. Obama had very fresh marketing and branding, first black president, but he really wasn't that far left. I mean, he continued the Bush tax cuts. He sent more troops to Afghanistan, and the list goes on. I mean, he took big donors, just like Hillary. And the odd thing is, that Hillary and Obama, if they were college age right now instead of 70 and 55, and yet a guy like Bernie were running, they would support Bernie. But because they were definitely more radicals in college, kind of that Saul Alinsky Chicago radical line of thinking. But now they can't back him, obviously. Hillary was chosen. Bernie Sanders is great. I think he's more of a FDR-style New Dealer. I saw one article, or read one article, that called him a democratic socialist capitalist. He's not as far left as Jill Stein's Green Party. He's not as far left as Eugene Debs on the Socialist Party in 1920, running from prison, receiving 1 million votes. Certainly not as far left as Gus Hall's Communist Party, where he used to run with Jarvis Tyner as his vice, or radical Marxists, anarchists, revolutionaries, people who are against political parties altogether, anarcho-syndicalists like Noam Chomsky. And as I say, anarchists like Peter Kropotkin. He's nothing like that, but he would have been fresh. But it just won't happen. So Hillary's going to be the person there. Trump, I guess, probably will win the nomination. Like I say, I think his line of thinking is kind of a mix. It's the right-wing populism that he had in the 80s with the reform kind of anti-establishment politics of Perot and Ventura. He's probably inspired in a lot of ways as well by Schwarzenegger and Reagan, people to come out of the pop culture. I think the number one inspiration for this, for Donald Trump, or maybe not inspiration, but similarity, is Silvio Berlusconi in Italy. And I mentioned that earlier in the video, but I think it should be talked about more, because Berlusconi took the same exact route, and he won. He was elected 4 times prime minister. So Trump, like I say, I think he will beat the establishment and be the candidate. It's going to be tough, though, but it's not unheard of globally for somebody to come out of the pop culture. I don't know what he's going to have to do. He's going to have some crossover from people who are anti-establishment, Sanders people. He's going to lose some people, like Ben Stein-type people, who see Hillary as more palatable. One Democrat who said he'd jump over is Jim Webb, more of a conservative Democrat. You'll see some jump over, and, you have radicals backing. Probably some libertarians have jumped over just because he's anti-establishment. Syria is such an interesting situation with 4 parties. You have the Syrian military backed by Hezbollah, Iran, Russia, the Kurds, the rebels, and ISIS. That, Trump has kind of taken a few different stances. I certainly don't think most of his policies are in line with libertarians, but some have jumped over. Or how about the old anarcho-capitalist Rothbard-type folks? I don't know if they jump over for him. But he's won some crossover there. He's won some crossover from different folks. You have certain celebrities who have kind of endorsed Sanders and Trump. Ventura himself, Howard Stern, some of those types of thinking. But anyway, he'll have some crossover, fears of terrorism. You'll have some success in jumping over, but I don't know if the numbers are going to be there, and I don't know if the swing states are going to be there. But you never know. He shocked the world once. He beat a party. Could he win the nation? That'll be the question. We will see. Clinton is going to do obviously well with minorities and women, so who knows? But the main thing in America, I think, Dave Ramsey, who's more conservative when he is political, had a great clip, though. He's being interviewed on, I believe, CNN. He said, if you're waiting for one of these candidates to come save your life sucks. America's about going out, dragging something, bringing it back in. My views are more left, but I also am a realist, and I realize that America, a president only has so much power. You have the House and the Senate and the courts. And then you have state governments that probably affect our lives more. Governors, state houses, state senate, state courts, county governments, city governments. And America's generally about going out and doing it yourself, and nobody's going to change it. That's why Trump can't turn it into a fascist state. Sanders wouldn't have been able to turn it into a socialist state. Nobody's going to turn it into a Marxist state. It's just, there are certain programs out there and different things, but for the most part, it's about going out, killing something, dragging it in. That's what America is all about.